Right, welcome back everyone to Pits to Podium. And this time out, we've got a very interesting topic in hand. Now, recently, Kunal was able to speak to Andrew Green. He's the technical director of Team Racing Point. And from that chat, he's got a big learning about how teams will actually operate on a Grand Prix weekend with the new regulations coming in and how this can actually shake things up quite a bit. So to discuss this, I've got Kunal himself with me. Hey, Kunal, how are you doing?
Hey guys, it's great to be back talking Formula One. It's like less than a fortnight to go for the first race of the season. How are you doing?
Oh, everything's going quite well, and I just can't wait for the first race at Austria. But Kunal, lots of things have been changing around. Now that we have the whole COVID-19 crisis in and around Formula One, we're still racing within this whole pandemic, but this means that new safety protocols have actually come in for all the teams to follow. Can you tell the viewers a bit more about what these safety protocols actually are and how will teams operate on a race weekend now?
Yeah, sure. So, I had the opportunity to speak to Andrew Green a couple of days ago during a Racing Point media interaction, and that's where I'm bringing a lot of my insights from. And, for Pits to Podium, we actually put out this whole math of what Lance Stroll's private day filming test was all about, how big and how long it was, and the duration and so on. But it turns out, and of course, this is how it was supposed to be, that Racing Point used the filming day test more than just installing the car and the driver and checking systems. They actually used the test to test how they were preparing under the new safety protocols, how they would approach a competitive Grand Prix weekend under the new safety protocols. And because they had a test, I've used the word test a lot in my statements, but that's the reality and that's the objective of this video, to tell you guys what Andrew Green had to say. But Soumil, I know you love cricket, and I know a lot of our listeners from India love cricket, but the truth is Andrew Green loves cricket as well. And I know this because he was a former colleague of mine at Force India, and we've spent several hours discussing test cricket and fast bowling. Okay, so fast bowling is also all about aerodynamics. That's what Andrew Green used to be back in point. So it was good to catch up with him. And in my view, one of the key highlights that came out of the discussion with Andrew was that reliability will be key for teams and drivers in 2020, and reliability also in terms of making sure that they don't make too many build mistakes or don't have too many crashes, because under the new safety protocols, Andrew Green was saying that regular things that they would do to rebuild a car take just more time. Okay, and he gave the example that, for example, with a power unit, depending on what you were changing, it could take up to twice the amount of time. So this could mean that the pressure will also be on the drivers to make sure they keep things on track and they keep things clean through a Grand Prix weekend.
Things could get actually quite tricky for all these drivers. Now, we remember last year, Williams had this sort of constraint financially, of course, that they can't really go all out on the curbs because then that would damage their car. But that sort of thing is now going to be perpetual for all the teams because they've got such big limitations in place to try and change parts on the cars. The drivers will actually have to be a lot more considerate. And Kunal, that just brings us on to the next thing about the reliability in terms of the parts and the machinery as well. Now, this is the time where actually your build quality and your quality checking comes into play because we no longer have the liberty of around 21 races. It's only a limited calendar this time out. And so every single race and every single point that you earn matters even more.
Yes, and we've said this in our previous videos, and we'll probably keep saying it all through this season, that consistency will matter. Consistency from the teams, consistency from the drivers. People making lesser mistakes will probably reap more benefits as the season progresses, and that's pretty standard. And at the end of the day, Andrew Green was very expressive when he came to explaining what these protocols also were. It's about maintaining social distances, while they're in the garages. It's also about, the fact that people will wear the PPE masks as, they're supposed to through a Grand Prix weekend. And, racing safely is suddenly going to take a new meaning altogether because, the cost of getting it wrong is going to be so high. It's just about one person probably being at the risk of catching the virus and spreading it, and suddenly the team could no longer end up racing for that particular race. So the stakes are only that much more high, when it comes to going racing in 2020.
No, absolutely. And another thing that we must consider is just the complexity of these Formula One cars. Now, normally on a race weekend, teams have to make so many changes with the car in terms of the aerodynamics, in terms of the setup, that it all becomes a very complicated matter. And now that with the new protocols in, with limited time, in fact, as well, and with limited distance between all the people, it's going to be even more tricky. But Kunal, these sort of things have been tested out by Racing Point. They recently had a test at Silverstone, a filmic day of sorts that we mentioned previously. And so many other manufacturers have done that as well. We've had Renault doing one, we've had Ferrari doing one, Mercedes as well. Now, we discussed this in our previous video that this could turn out to be a major advantage for these teams. But is it really? Because Andrew Green seems to have different opinions regarding this.
Yeah, so Andrew Green was very forthcoming. He said the fact is these protocols, the new protocols that they have to operate under, the COVID-19 protocols, they can be and are being tested by various teams under factory circumstances. Okay, it's just that Racing Point had the opportunity to take it to a live environment, and let's remember it's far easier for them because the Racing Point factory is literally 100 meters down the road from Silverstone. So at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that teams get efficient with these processes. And we all know how Formula One teams are like the masters of finding microseconds in all these processes. So as the season progresses, my assumption is that they will try and become more efficient, more faster, more leaner while sticking and adhering to these processes. And another thing that actually stood out for me with my interaction with Andrew Green was that when he spoke about teams, and how they would focus on a weekend. So he said it's increasingly going to be about getting things right. It's increasingly focusing on things that are absolutely important, and not trying to do too many things on a Grand Prix weekend, because you might just suddenly realize that you're running out of time in building the car and making sure that everything happens on time, because we know it's a very cramped format, even though it's a 3-day format. So we will see teams trying to just get their basics right before trying to sort of build on their baseline car setups and strategies and models and so on.
No, indeed. And just before we wrap up, Kunal, the last question that I had for you is now normally if you expect a smaller team like Racing Point, these guys don't really have the operational might and the budgets of, say, someone like Mercedes. And especially the social distancing norms, they're not only in place at the Grand Prix weekend, but also back at the factory as well, where the cars are actually made. How does that affect a team like Racing Point, and what implications can it have, let's say, for the future cars, say for 2021, or perhaps even for the bigger regulation change in 2022?
It's a very interesting question, because we don't know till when the new normal is going to exist, if this new normal is the good old normal going forward, right? But it's about making sure the teams are just able to get their processes right in every capacity and every operating environment they can. And at the end of the day, Andrew Green also gave a good insight on the fact that Racing Point, or now they're going to be called Aston Martin from next year, they are way off the budget cap limits that have been put for next year. So he's turned around and said that it's not just about spending lesser money for the teams that are spending over the budget cap, but it's also about reformulating these processes, reformulating how they do things with lesser people and lesser money. That's going to be important. It's about driving efficiency through everything that they did. So a lot of business processes would need to be rethought, so that everyone falls within the budget cap. And I also believe that with the budget cap and the sliding aero scale, we will see the performance gap between the top 3 teams and everyone else being bridged sooner rather than later, which is great for Formula One.
No, absolutely. Resourcefulness is the key instead of resources, isn't it?
That's correct. And that's actually a wonderful management mantra you put out there. And something else that the last point that, Andrew Green was kind enough to share was the fact that, Aston Martin's new factory is going to be delayed by 1 whole year. So instead of August 2021, it's going to be coming up by August 2022. And, most of us during the media session wondered if this would sort of disadvantage the team. But Andrew Green, of course, offered a very interesting perspective. He said, now we are rethinking everything that we had initially planned for the factory, because people are working very efficiently from home. They are, liking the new, you're working in isolation, but still on the cloud and with various team members. So, the factory being delayed is not going to impact Aston Martin and Racing Point's development plan. And at the same time, they are using this time to rethink all the, initial factory models they had as well. So, the break is being accepted very positively by I'm sure all the F1 team members out there who are literally just raring to go racing come Austria.
Exactly. Well, that's a major silver lining as well. And one another major silver lining is the fact that F1 will be back very, very soon at Austria. Till then, you can keep on watching our videos and maybe check out more content that we put out on Pits To Podium. And if you like this one, don't forget, in fact, to like this video, share this video with your friends and family members, and also to subscribe to the Pits To Podium on YouTube and all our other social handles as well. Well, Kunal, thank you so much for being a part of this video, and see you for another one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.